Hi Aya, how you doing, girl? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mina and I'm a first-year med student living in Los Angeles. Basically, now that I'm living so far away from home, I've been making like little video letters for my little sister Aya on this YouTube channel, so that's what this is. And Aya, today, I thought I would tell you a little bit about how I got here and where I want to go. To be clear, I'm definitely not here to give anyone advice on how to get into medical school. I'm not an expert in that area, and besides, Aya, you're not interested in medicine, so that's not really relevant for you. Instead, I'm just here to share a little bit about my story because I realized that as I was going through college and the whole like med school application process, I really didn't tell you that much about what was going on in my life, Aya. Now that I'm on the other side of things and actually in medical school, let's talk about it. It all started 23 years ago when I was born in Chicago, Illinois. There, I enjoyed 4 peaceful years with my mom, dad, and older sister Sora, and frankly, life was great. Then you were born, and suddenly I was a middle child. Now, despite this hardship, I persevered. The 3 of us enjoyed a lovely life growing up in Illinois. We are half Japanese and half African American, so we grew up in a mixed household. We spent our weekdays going to like an American public school, and then on the weekends we studied Japanese and piano. Now, Aya, you were there for a lot of that, so if you don't mind, I'm going to skip forward a few years to 2016 when I was a freshman in high school. I think that was sort of when I first more fully realized just how different our family was in a majority white neighborhood, right? That, in conjunction with all of the other terrors of adolescence, definitely made me become a lot more self-conscious, and I was basically just like a shy, socially awkward teen. Back then, reading was definitely my form of escape, and for a long time, I actually thought that I was gonna grow up to be an author. It was, and definitely still is, my dream to write novels and tell stories. So back then, being a doctor was like not on my radar at all. Anyways, during my junior year of high school, I took an anatomy and physiology class taught by a doctor of medicine, which was pretty special considering that I just went to like a public high school. And he was genuinely one of my favorite teachers of all time. He definitely challenged us a lot, and we covered material that we like didn't even touch when I was in college. And we would actually spend a lot of time going through real medical cases and doing cool dissections and stuff like that. And honestly, it was kind of life-changing. So that sort of put the thought in my head of like, maybe I could be a doctor. So during my senior year, I applied to colleges as a pre-med student. Crazy! And I ended up getting into Northwestern, where I majored in biology with I think a concentration in cell bio and a minor in psych. I do feel like college marked a sort of shift in my life in a few ways. Part of it was that when I got to school and I realized that everyone was a freaking nerd, it definitely helped me sort of like embrace my own nerdiness. And I really loved how everyone around me was also equally enthusiastic about, you know, their studies and their future goals, and I found that very motivational. But during my freshman year, I also started to get really tired, like really tired. I was falling asleep like 2-3 times a day at random intervals, and I had no idea why. No matter how much I slept, no matter how much caffeine I drank, I would just get like crazy sleepy. And I'll be honest, that was not great. It was definitely really hard to study and do my homework when I would like at random points just get hit with like extreme fatigue. But it was also really scary when it would happen during an exam, for instance, because I could not control it. And as a result, I would say that both my academics and my self-confidence took a big hit. Throughout my sophomore year, my symptoms just got worse and worse, to the point where I was getting like physically sick from just like how tired I was, I guess. And I would even get sent home from orgo lab, which in any other circumstance would have been a blessing, but in this case really made me think like, hey, maybe this is a sign from the universe that like I am not cut out for medicine, because what is going on, right? I definitely thought about dropping pre-med like at least every other day. Then halfway through my sophomore year, I finally did a proper 24-hour sleep study, and that led me to be officially diagnosed with narcolepsy. It was both kind of like a relief and terrifying to receive that diagnosis. One, because narcolepsy is a chronic condition that doesn't necessarily have a cure, but at the same time it was also very validating to finally have an answer to something that I'd been struggling with for like almost 2 years at that point. So at this point I kind of had to decide like, hey, narcolepsy is going to be something that you have for the rest of your life. Do you really want to become a doctor? And clearly I decided to stick with it, partially because I was stubborn, and it wasn't because I was super confident that things were going to work out for me, because trust me, I was not. But also partially because I was just curious to see like what would happen if I stuck with it. During my freshman and sophomore year, I was just barely, you know, managing my academics. So I was not doing many extracurriculars. I wasn't a sorority, and I wasn't like a global health club, I think. But beyond that, I was not doing any research projects. I maybe shadowed for like 2 days. But during my junior year, once I finally started to like get treatment and sort of adapt to my new situation, I guess, I was finally able to do more, and that did a lot for my confidence. So going into my junior year, I did a research fellowship that was focused on learning about health inequities in Chicago, specifically surrounding like cancer. That fellowship connected me to a research lab in a hospital that I reached out to during my junior year to ask like, hey, do you have any room for an undergrad in your lab, maybe, pretty please? And they were like, oh yeah, like if you want to help out, come over. I do feel like amongst pre-meds, there was a lot of like guarding of information where people just like didn't really want to share where they were at because, you know, the environment was super competitive, and I get that. But looking back, I think as a pre-med, I definitely would have appreciated a little bit more transparency to make the process seem less scary. So I am gonna put out some numbers just to like keep it real with you guys. Just know that I don't think my application is representative of what a good application looks like necessarily. It just is mine. Just keep in mind that there are multiple roads to success, is I guess what I'm saying. So if your application like doesn't look like mine, good, great, that's the point. So I studied for the MCAT during the summer in between my junior and senior year because I was planning on taking 1 gap year. I applied for a grant and was able to work part-time in that same lab that I worked in during my junior year over that summer. And so every other day I would spend a few hours in the lab, and then on my off days I would study. I think I tried to study for like 30 hours a week, something like that. And when I tell you that was like the worst summer of my life, oh my gosh, it was so rough. I remember especially during those first 2 months, I was just really frustrated and really upset because my scores weren't improving as much as I wanted them to, and I definitely had moments where I was like, well, what even is the point? Like, I don't even want to be a doctor. Like, it was bad, it was bad. In the end, I took the exam in September at the end of the summer. I got a 520, was happy with my score, so I only took it once. And then during my senior year, I continued with that lab I was telling you about, and I ended up doing my honors thesis on the biomarkers of cancer cachexia. I could not tell you the title of my honors thesis if I wanted to at this point, I don't remember. In terms of other extracurriculars, I tutored college students and high school students in biology from my sophomore year through my senior year. And then during my junior and senior year, I was a hospice volunteer. Oh, I also fostered cats throughout my entire junior year. And so that was sort of like, I guess like my community-based volunteering, and I loved that. Then in March of my senior year, I officially started my med school application, which consists of submitting your primary application, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's like the Common App, sort of. And then during the summer, I did my secondaries, which is where you write a bunch of smaller essays for every individual school. And then after that, it was interview season. I think in the end, I ended up applying to 19 schools. I interviewed at 3 of them. From my own experience, which is all I can really speak to, I gotta say, I was most nervous for the interview process, given like my history of social anxiety and just like awkwardness, but the interviews were actually hands down my favorite part of the application process, like easily. That was when you actually kind of got like a real feel for the schools and got to talk to students, professors, things like that, and sort of learn about what stands out about each institution. And it was really great. I think they each made a really big effort to make me comfortable, and actually during the interviews, like, everyone wanted to hear about my experience fostering cats. I thought that they were gonna grill me on like, I don't know, my research experience, but like that actually never came up at all, and everyone instead asked me about my cats. And at the end of the day, I actually ultimately only received 1 acceptance. Basically what happened was like, I got into one school, and at that point I actually hadn't heard back from the other 2 schools I'd interviewed at, but the school that offered me an acceptance was just like very convincing, I guess. Just in terms of like location, I was really excited to go to LA, but also just there were like financial incentives for me to go. So I ended up pulling my applications from those other 2 schools, and here I am. It's been great so far. A huge transition to move from Chicago to LA for sure. It's definitely been, you know, tricky to just like navigate some like adult realities, like paying rent all on my own, taking out loans for the first time, you know, just things like that. But I've had a lot of support, and I have already made some pretty good friends here. So in the end, things actually did work out. Now, Aya, you're still a sophomore in college, so you're just sort of starting to think about your future career. And I know you're not interested in medicine, but whatever your goals may be and however unrealistic they may seem, it's okay if you don't know whether or not you can do it, but you might as well stay curious and give it a shot, just so you can see and collect that data, you know what I mean? Like, keep that research perspective, because you really never know how things are going to turn out, and usually just in that process of shooting for the stars, you end up doing some pretty cool things anyways. Okay, that Loki got cornballs at the end there, so let's end with a fun fact. Did you guys know that the language spoken by minions in the Despicable Me movies is different in every country. So if you guys have ever watched the Despicable Me movies or like the Minions movies, you guys know that Minionese is basically like gibberish. It's a mishmash of words and sounds taken from a bunch of different languages put together. So you would think that when they translate the Despicable Me movies to be produced in like China, for example, they would just keep that the same, like they wouldn't translate Minionese. But it turns out they do. Minionese sounds different in different countries. I guess their goal was sort of to make Minionese sound almost familiar to people that are listening, but like ultimately still nonsense. So depending on the country that they're in, they'll shift the gibberish sounds that the Minions make so that it sounds like a little bit more familiar to whatever local culture or country is there. I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny and a good way to end this video. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I don't really intend to make this YouTube channel all about med school because Aya is not into medicine. That said, I definitely will show my life as a med student. So if that sounds interesting to you, like and subscribe. But yeah, otherwise I will see you in the next video. Bye!